The year is 2024. Silicon, lithium-ion batteries, neural networks. We are confident that robots are our invention. This is a lie. 1700 years before the invention of seismology, a bronze vessel in China detected an earthquake from 500 kilometers away. An earthquake that was not felt in the capital. Without a single wire, without any electronics. And this is not an isolated glitch in the timeline. Stop. We have found at least 6 working protocols for creating autonomous machines thousands of years before our era. These are not toys. These are technologies that should not have existed. Official history calls them curious mechanisms. This is a convenient label to avoid rewriting textbooks. We will call them something else. Mechanical ghosts. And now, we will break down their code, one by one. The first protocol, China, 132 AD. Imagine the throne room of the Han Dynasty. Silence. The air smells of cooling bronze and incense as dust motes dance in the slanted rays of light. In the center of the hall stands a machine, a huge bronze vessel nearly 2 meters in diameter. Along its perimeter are 8 dragons, each facing a cardinal direction. Below each dragon is a bronze toad with an open mouth. Absolute stillness. Then, a sharp, dry, metallic clang rings out. A ball drops from the mouth of one of the dragons, falling directly into the mouth of the toad below. The dragon is facing northwest. But in the capital, everything is perfectly still. No one felt a thing. Not a single tremor, not the slightest vibration. The palace guard is confused. A few days later, a messenger bursts into the capital. His horse is covered in foam, and he can barely stay in the saddle. The news is dire. 500 kilometers to the northwest, the city of Longzi has been destroyed by an earthquake. Jiang Heng's machine worked. It detected the first, faintest seismic signal, the compression wave that travels faster than the main destructive one, a wave that humans cannot feel. Inside the vessel, there is no magic, no spirits. There is a heavy copper pendulum, a complex inertial sensor that worked 1700 years before it was invented again. Think about it. This is not just a recording device. It is an extension of human senses. A machine that sees what humans cannot. That warns of a threat from hundreds of kilometers away. You might say it's a singular, brilliant invention. Fine. But it gets stranger. Next is a machine that doesn't just sense, it lives. Spain, the 1560s. King Philip II commissions his court mechanic, Juanelo Torriano, to create a prayer. Not an icon, not a statue, not a fresco. A mechanism that will pray for the soul of his deceased son. Cold stone floors of the palace. The smell of wax and old frozen iron. And the quiet, dry creak of a winding key. Before us is a robot monk, 40 centimeters tall. Beneath its wooden robe is a highly complex mechanism of springs, levers, and cam discs. This is not a chaotic jumble of parts. It is a physical program, carved into metal. It doesn't just roll on wheels. It walks, slowly shifting its weight from heel to toe. With its right hand, it beats its chest. With its left, it brings a small cross to its lips and kisses it. Its eyes follow the cross and its jaw moves, silently whispering a prayer. Physically impossible. 450 years later, it still works. It stands in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., completely autonomous after being wound. Contemporaries were certain a demon or the soul of a sinner was trapped inside. They could not believe that metal and wood could so accurately imitate life. They could find no other explanation. Today, there is an explanation. Officially, it's the pinnacle of clockwork art. Stop. Clocks measure time. This mechanism reproduces biomechanics. It simulates gait, gestures, and facial movements. This is a fundamentally different level of complexity, a different engineering discipline. To call this clockwork is to ignore an inconvenient fact. This is no longer a sensor that extends the senses. It is an autonomous machine that imitates a human. And if this clockmaker could write the code for walking, what could others do? What were those who worked 1,000 years before him capable of? Let's go even further back. Not 1,000, but 1,500 years before our monk. Alexandria, 2nd century BC, the center of the world where science and luxury were intertwined. Imagine a feast, the noise of voices, the smell of wine and roasted meat. The warm, humid evening air feels heavy. In the corner of the hall stands a life-size statue of a maiden, made of copper and bronze. She holds a pitcher in her right hand. A guest approaches and places an empty cup in her outstretched left hand. And this is where it gets interesting. The weight of the cup triggers a hidden mechanism. Wine begins to flow from the pitcher in her right hand, silently, smoothly. When the cup is 3/4 full, its weight again shifts an internal lever. The flow of wine stops, and water pours into the cup, just enough to dilute the drink according to the customs of ancient etiquette. The guest takes the cup, and the statue becomes still. Until the next one. This is not a trick with a dwarf hidden inside the pedestal. This is pure pneumatics and hydraulics from the engineer Philo of Byzantium. Inside the statue are 2 sealed containers with wine and water. A system of siphons, tubes, and valves reacts to the change in weight in her hand. This is the world's first vending machine. But that's not the main point. The main point is the physical embodiment of a logical algorithm. If a cup is placed in the hand, then pour wine. If the weight reaches mark X, then stop the wine and pour water. Hard code, written in metal and water. Official history calls this a clever toy, a convenient label. It allows us to ignore that this is no toy. This is a sequence of operations, conditions, and triggers. These are the fundamentals of modern automation, which we are told appeared 2,000 years later. Let's recap. We have a hypersensitive sensor that sees through the Earth. We have an autonomous biorobot that mimics life. And now, a programmable machine that operates on a clear algorithm. The pattern is already emerging. But these are all singular, one-off actions. Start, perform, stop. But what about repetitive cycles? What about true, programmable music? Mesopotamia, 1206 AD. Imagine the midday heat, the smell of dust and spices. In his workshop, the brilliant engineer Ismail al-Jazari is finishing the designs for his treatise, The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices. This is not just a book. It is a collection of assembly instructions for over 100 machines, from water clocks to water lifting systems. I also thought it was just a collection of medieval curiosities, until I saw the blueprints for his orchestra. To entertain the caliph, Al-Jazari builds a boat. On it sit 4 musician figures, 2 drummers, a harpist, and a flutist. The boat is launched onto the palace pond. Sensory details. The gentle lapping of water, the glint of sun on polished copper, the tense silence of the courtiers. The mechanism starts, and the boat begins to play. You've heard this version, a musical box on water. It sounds harmless, but a closer look shatters that idea. Let's look not at the figures, but at what's hidden below deck. The boat is powered by the flow of water, which turns a water wheel. On the same axle is a wooden cylinder, a camshaft, and on this shaft are rows of small pegs. As the shaft rotates, these pegs press hidden levers in a strictly defined sequence. The levers, in turn, move the musicians' hands, making them beat the drums and play their instruments. This is the first documented camshaft in history. a mechanism without which no modern internal combustion engine is conceivable. But even that is not the main point. Stop. The main point is this. The pegs on the shaft could be removed and rearranged. Think about that for a second. By changing their positions, Al-Jazari changed the sequence of lever presses. He changed the rhythm. He changed the melody. He changed the program. This is not a music box. A music box plays the same melody for its entire existence. This is a programmable mechanism. A machine where the hardware is separate from the software. The shaft is the data storage medium. The arrangement of the pegs is the code. A code that could be rewritten. And this is where the textbooks start to get confused, because this principle, a changeable program on a physical medium, is the foundation of our entire civilization. It is the predecessor not only of the barrel organ, but also of the Jacquard loom, which used punch cards to create patterns. It is a direct ancestor of Babbage's analytical engine. This is version 0 of computer programming. Officially, it's explained as a brilliant engineer creating complex entertainment. But then, there's a gap. Because that doesn't explain why a technology 700 years ahead of its time was used only for music. Or are we only told about the music? If they could write code to entertain a caliph, what else did they write it for? To control complex processes? For calculations? For warfare? The question hangs in the air, and it's an uncomfortable one, because the answer exists, and it's documented. Let's travel to China during the Three Kingdoms period, 3rd century AD. Picture the scene, a thick, dense fog that swallows sounds and shapes. The damp, cold air settles on armor, on skin. Visibility is no more than an arm's length. An army is moving through unfamiliar, hostile territory, and any mistake in direction means a trap, an ambush, death. The compass as we know it does not yet exist. The magnetic needle will appear 800 years later. And in the midst of this chaos moves a chariot. On it is a wooden figure of a man with an outstretched arm. No matter which way the chariot turns, right, left, or even in place, the figure's arm stubbornly points in the same direction. South. Wait, this sounds like a fairy tale. A legend told to emphasize the wisdom of the ancients. And official history treats it as such, a semi-mythical device that may not have even existed. But the blueprints exist, and they shatter this convenient version. There is no magnet inside the chariot. There is no magic. There is a highly complex system of wooden differential gears connected to the wheels. Let's do the math. When the chariot turns left, its right wheel travels a greater distance than its left. The mechanism reads this difference in rotation. It calculates the angle of the turn, and through a system of gears, rotates the figure in the opposite direction by the exact same angle. The result? Compensation for any maneuver. The direction is maintained. This is pure mechanics. And this is where it gets unsettling. This is the exact same principle used in the differential of every modern car. It's not a similar solution, it is the solution. Implemented in wood 1,500 years before Carl Benz installed it in his first automobile. You've heard the version, a curious toy. But this is no toy. It is a military technology, an autonomous mechanical navigator that cannot be fooled, that works in fog, in storms, at night, a device that provides a decisive tactical advantage. And this proves it. Ancient engineers were solving not just entertaining problems, but critically important ones for survival. They created systems on which the outcome of battles and the lives of thousands depended. But even that is not the limit. Ancient Greece, 400 years BC. Imagine it. The hot sun melts the air. Dust hangs in columns, gritty between the teeth. The roar of the crowd is a mix of curiosity and disbelief. A mathematician and friend of Plato, Archytas of Tarentum, steps into the square. In his hands, he holds a smoothly polished wooden pigeon. He makes no speeches. He simply fastens the bird to taut cables. Below it, servants light a small fire. The crowd falls silent. Sensory details: the smell of dry wood, smoke, and something else. Metal. Inside the hollow bird is a sealed copper boiler filled with water. A minute passes. 2. Nothing happens. The first chuckles are heard, and then? First, a low whistle. Then, a deafening, angry hiss. A jet of steam under immense pressure erupts from a tiny nozzle in the pigeon's tail. The wooden bird launches and flies 200 meters through the air. 200 meters. Hold on, this is not a glider. This is not a catapult. This is jet propulsion. 2,000 years before it was rediscovered for rockets, and 2,400 years before the Wright brothers. Eyewitnesses, whose records have survived, were convinced that Archytas had trapped a spirit of the air in the wood or caught the wind in a snare. They sought an explanation in magic because they had no other. But it wasn't magic, it was physics, aerodynamics and thermodynamics. Calculation of pressure, material resistance, and lift. It was a jet-propelled, unmanned aerial vehicle. Technologies that, according to the official version in textbooks, simply did not exist then. And this is where the theory of curious toys and lone geniuses doesn't just crack, it collapses. Stop. Let's put it all together. A hypersensitive sensor that sees through the Earth and feels what humans cannot. An autonomous biorobot that imitates life with frightening accuracy. A programmable vending machine operating on a rigid if-then algorithm. A reprogrammable music synthesizer on a camshaft, a forerunner of computer code. A mechanical navigator with differentials, a military technology 1,500 years ahead of the auto industry. And a jet-propelled drone. These are not 6 different brilliant toys scattered across the centuries. They are 6 manifestations of a single, lost school of engineering. A school that mastered pneumatics, hydraulics, complex mechanics, differential calculus, in wood and metal, programming, and jet propulsion. They weren't just creating curious mechanisms, they were solving problems we considered the exclusive domain of the modern era. This is where it gets uncomfortable. They will tell you, these were lone geniuses, ahead of their time. A convenient phrase to avoid changing anything. But a genius cannot be 2,000 years ahead of their time. A genius doesn't work in a vacuum. Isaac Newton would not have discovered his laws without the work of Galileo and Kepler. Einstein would not have created the theory of relativity without the mathematics of Riemann and Lobachevsky. A genius works with available knowledge, tools, and a technological base. They take the next step. They don't leap across a 1,000-year chasm. And that means the base was there, the knowledge was there, the tools were there. The official version of history calls these artifacts anomalies. Because they don't fit into the smooth, convenient line of progress from a stone axe to a smartphone. But when there are too many anomalies, they are no longer anomalies. They are a pattern. And this is where the real problem begins. The question is not if these technologies existed. The facts scream that they did. The question is different. Why did this technological branch die out? Why did humanity, after creating a jet engine in 400 BC, regress for 1,500 years, only to painfully, step by step, rediscover what had already been done? And this is where the textbooks prefer to remain silent. To acknowledge the existence of this school of engineering is to admit that our timeline of progress is a lie. That there was a civilization, or group of civilizations, that reached a 17th to 19th century level of technology long before our era, and then something went wrong. This is not just an inconvenient fact. It is the collapse of the entire academic worldview, and that is precisely why the official version clings to the word curiosity. It's a convenient label. a defense protocol to avoid rewriting hundreds of thousands of books and answering one simple question: how did we miss this? I understand why you don't want to believe it. It shatters the cozy, beautiful picture of linear development, where we are the pinnacle of evolution, where everything progressed sequentially: fire, the wheel, bronze, iron, steam, electricity, silicon. In this model, we are the absolute champions. To admit that someone before us had already reached programmable mechanisms and jet propulsion is to admit that we might just be repeating a cycle. And that is why it is so dangerous to the system, because it sounds like heresy. And so the artifacts are called curious toys. But here is where that version breaks. It breaks on patents. Today, engineers receive patents for differential gears, for inertial navigation systems, for programmable automata. They receive grants, build careers, and advance modern science by creating what, as documents show, was already created 2,000 years ago. This is not just a paradox. It is a fundamental contradiction. Either we are not inventors but reconstructors, or the history we are being told is incomplete. And that's putting it mildly. Think for a second. If they could do this, what else could they do? What level did their metallurgy reach to create sealed boilers that could withstand immense steam pressure? What level did their mathematics reach to calculate complex differential gears out of wood? What energy sources did they use? And it gets worse. The most unsettling part is when the numbers break the beautiful story. And here's the question that is usually not asked aloud. If this technological branch was so powerful, why did it disappear? Was this knowledge lost by accident? In a library fire? In the chaos of wars? In the changing of eras? Or was it destroyed, deliberately, as a dangerous technology that gave someone too much power? So, bronze that feels, iron that walks, water that executes an algorithm, wood that flies on jet propulsion. These are not anomalies, they are facts. 6 lines of the same lost code, breaking through to us across the centuries. We are not looking for magic. We are looking for an engineering protocol. And these mechanisms prove it. Their creators operated not with primitive concepts, but with categories of modern cybernetics: feedback, algorithm, programmable cycle. The only difference is the components. Instead of silicon and lithium, they used copper, wood, and water. But the logic is the same. In the next 5 to 10 years, artificial intelligence will begin to mass analyze ancient texts that were previously accessible only to a narrow group of specialists. What will it find in manuscripts that historians read but did not understand? What schematics and calculations will it see where a humanities scholar saw only mythology? I understand why this version is captivating. It gives a sense of a hidden, great history. But look at the details, and it becomes unsettling, because this is where the official version breaks, and what comes next is what the textbooks prefer to keep silent about. At this point, the version of a primitive past ends, period. It was convenient, beautiful, and understandable, but here, it died. Not because we want it to, but because it cannot withstand scrutiny against the basic laws of physics and mechanics. Save this video, not for me, for yourself. Go back to the timecode with the south-pointing chariot. It's about halfway through. Open a diagram of a car's differential in another tab. Compare them. Write in the comments if these are similar principles or the exact same technology separated from us by 1,500 years of oblivion. We have found traces of their hardware, their mechanisms, their artifacts. But where is their software? Where are their books, their blueprints, their libraries of calculations? If human intelligence doesn't evolve, but only materials and tools do, then the most uncomfortable question is this: what exactly did we truly lose? And can we recreate it, before it's too late.